In 1998, 17-year-old Iwana Kaigan was in her bedroom when the phone rang. She hesitated for a moment before picking it up. On the other end, her best friend's voice. "Come out with me tonight. Let's go to the club." Iwana agreed. At the club, everything felt normal at first. The music was loud, the floor was crowded, and Iwana was smiling as she danced. But then, 3 men began circling her. She tried to ignore them, but they wouldn't stop. Soon, their words turned into fists. They punched her. They struck her again and again. And the worst part? People stood there, watching. Even her best friend did nothing. Moments later, Iwana was forced into a white car, driven out of town, away from the lights, away from help, into a lonely, remote area where the real horror began. There, she was beaten so brutally that her entire body was covered in wounds. She was assaulted, and finally, strangled to death. The unthinkable betrayal. The person who lured her out that night, her best friend, was part of it all. By morning, Iwana's body was discovered. But justice? Justice never came. Because 14 police officers falsified reports, tampered with evidence, and buried the truth. Iwana never really got justice.
Do you know who the Radium Girls were? The Radium Girls were so contaminated with radiation that today, if you stood over their graves, it would still make like radiation detectors fucking spike. Okay, so the Radium Girls were a group of girls from a small town in New Jersey who were hired to paint these watch faces, these glow-in-the-dark watch faces for the military. So they were specifically told to lick their brushes to get like a finer, nicer like point to it in between like some of their strokes. Their faces, their bones, their jaws were actively melting off. They were poisoned to fucking death and died a terrible, disgusting, cruel, vile way, right? These poor girls, these poor fucking women. Not only did we have radium in paint, we also had it in water that came from refrigerators. We had it falsely advertised on other products as well, like fucking butter for some reason. We used to have it in our toothpaste. We used to fucking brush our teeth with it. It used to be in toys. It used to be in wall paint. We were so poisoned as a fucking society because we just didn't know how it fucking worked, and we were fine with it.
Long before Photoshop, Victorians had lots of creepy photography trends like this. From headless portraits to photos with actual dead people in them. Let's start with the headless photos. For a while it was a trend for Victorians to take photographs where it appeared that their head was detached from their body. This wasn't anything paranormal, just an illusion. Because early cameras required long exposures, photographers would use double exposure techniques. A person would sit for part of the image and then move and pose again, and it would result in something like this. And to them, it was prime entertainment. Probably the Victorian equivalent of a viral filter. This next trend was kind of subtle, but it gets creepier once you see it. Do you see that curtain behind this child? And this chair that looks kind of off? These are called hidden mother photographs. Because with early photography, you had to sit still for a couple of seconds. So the mother of the child getting photographed would hide behind some sort of curtain or sheet and hold their child still. And once you notice it, you can't unsee it. And then they had death photography. Unfortunately, in the 1800s, death was very common. Disease spread fast and we didn't have the medical knowledge that we have today. And photography was expensive. So for many families, the only portrait they ever have of their loved one was taken after they died. The deceased person was sometimes posed to look alive and propped upright in chairs. And the creepier part is because the photo exposure times were long, the living people would look blurry, while the dead would remain perfectly still in the photograph.
3 students from the same high school all mysteriously died within weeks of each other, and they all had one thing in common. They had been hypnotized by their principal. 2011, Northport High School in Florida. The principal, Dr. George Kinney, had a reputation. He wasn't just an administrator, he performed hypnosis on students. He had taken a 5-day hypnosis course, but he was not licensed. To this day, there's no official ruling that the hypnosis caused their deaths. Still, he hypnotized more than 70 people, including students, for things like test anxiety, athletic performance, focus, and even strangely, pain tolerance. Some students said it helped them pass exams, do better in sports. But something happened. Within weeks of each other, 3 students who had private hypnosis sessions with him all died. Marcus Freeman, Leslie McKinley, and Brittany Palumbo. 3 teenagers, same school, same principal, all recently hypnotized. Marcus Freeman was 16, and he had been going to sessions before football games. According to friends, This principal would put him in a trance so he wouldn't feel pain on the field. His best friend said that he would take a huge hit and just keep playing like nothing happened. But they noticed that sometimes he would leave the field with a blank stare. March 2011, Marcus was driving home after a dentist appointment. Suddenly, his girlfriend said he got a really strange look on his face. Then he veered off the road, crashed into a tree, and died. Weeks later, Wesley McKinley, a talented musician preparing to audition for Juilliard, also died. His mom said that after these hypnosis sessions, he started to act odd. At some points, he didn't respond to his own name and thought he had 11 fingers. He was allegedly hypnotized to skip the number 7 when counting. The day he died, his mom said he walked past her silently, out the back door. An hour later, she heard sirens. Brittany Palumbo. She had gone to the principal for help improving her SAT scores and reducing anxiety. Her mother even attended the session. She said that afterward, Brittany didn't remember parts of the session. When her test scores didn't improve, she became distraught. May 2011, Brittany went into her room to take a nap. Later, her parents found her deceased. The parents began wondering, did hypnosis play a role in this? The principal denied ever harming the students. He reportedly said he didn't know that hypnosis could be dangerous for students that might be depressed. He later pled no contest to practicing therapeutic hypnosis without a license, a misdemeanor, and he resigned. The families sued the school board and later settled. I gotta know, what do you think?
This is a crazy story, and I'm just going to show you the video first. It's a video of this woman being arrested, and that arrest led to the discovery of a woman who was abducted in 1983.
Uh-oh, they're coming for you, Sharon!
They don't want me. They want Reggie.
What's up?
Well, we're here for you, ma'am. Definitely here for you.
Whoa, why?
We're waiting on the detective to get here, but we have, with all the information that we do have, you have a warrant for your arrest.
They're teasing. They have to be.
Ma'am, we're not.
Oh,
You can back up.
oh,
You can
I'm
go home.
so sorry.
No, you're okay.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, go ahead and go home. Thank you.
I don't understand.
Yes, ma'am. So,
You're Sharon, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, it's kind of terrifying that the friend joked, "They're coming for you, Sharon," and then she was actually arrested. Secondly, this woman is not named Sharon. Her name is Deborah Newton, and she has been wanted for the abduction of her daughter since 1983, and at one point, she was even deemed one of the FBI's top 8 most wanted parental kidnapping fugitives. On April 2nd, 1983, 3-year-old Michelle Newton was taken from her home in Louisville, Kentucky by her mother, Deborah Newton. Deborah allegedly told her then-husband, Joseph Newton, that she was leaving for a job in Georgia, and at first, Joseph didn't realize anything was amiss because his wife claimed they were relocating to Georgia to begin a new job and prepare a new home for the family. He was supposed to go with them, but Deborah left early and he had to continue working back in Kentucky. He was in contact with them for a little while, but the last time he spoke to his wife was sometime between 1984 and 1985, and after that, Deborah and Michelle vanished, and he hasn't seen his daughter for 38 years. Authorities allege that Deborah had abducted Michelle, and Michelle was considered a missing person for years. In 2005, the case was dismissed because prosecutors were no longer able to reach Joseph, but Michelle and Deborah's whereabouts remained unknown for the last 38 years. Until now, because on November 24th, 66-year-old Deborah was arrested in the Villages, Florida, and charged with custodial interference. She will now be facing these charges and will likely be spending time in prison. And Michelle, now 46 years old, was reunited with her father. Joseph said of the meeting, quote, "She's always been in our heart. I can't explain the moment of walking in and getting to put my arms back around my daughter. I'm so happy she's home, she has been found, she's back with her father, and her mother will have to pay for what she did."
What would make someone disappear on purpose? December 2001, 38-year-old Michelle Smith was reported missing after she didn't return home from a Christmas shopping trip at Kmart. The search was on for her in Martinsville, Virginia. FBI searched for her. Posters said she was endangered. And her family insisted that she would never ever leave her children by choice. She left behind 3 children. For decades, authorities looked for Michelle. But for 20 years, there was no trace of her. And in that 20 years, many accused her husband of being involved in her disappearance. Until police just confirmed she's alive, living in a different state under a different name. There was no kidnapping, there was no crime. Police say she left voluntarily. And according to reports, she is unwilling to reconnect with her family. One of her children said finding out has been a whirlwind of emotions. Ecstatic, angry, heartbroken. So what would make someone walk away from their entire life and refuse to come back? What would make someone vanish on purpose? I'm just blown away. What are your thoughts?
She murdered her boyfriend and then buried him in the back garden. And the scariest part is she might have gotten away with it if it weren't for these chilling diary entries. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Nicholas Billingham. Nicholas, who went by the nickname Nick, was a man who was very much well loved by his family. He was a football fan and he was someone who was really good with his hands. He was a self-employed builder and he was very dedicated. He would help give people their dream homes by renovating for them. Nick met Fiona Beale, a primary school teacher, in 2004 and they hit it off. They began what would become a 17-year-long relationship. Initially, things started off really well between the couple. However, as their relationship began to progress, it began to deteriorate. Nick would cheat on Fiona. He had affairs behind her back, and one of these affairs resulted in him having a child. He apparently had a really bad gambling addiction, which financially impacted the couple negatively. Fiona described her experience with Nick in her personal diary, where she wrote that he was a, quote, argumentative, mean, cruel, belittling, nasty, lying, cheating, gambling, narcissistic, controlling, emotionally abusive, verbally abusive, and sexually demeaning. The couple shared a home on Moore Street in Northampton, where allegedly, by late 2021, Fiona was sleeping downstairs. On the 1st of November 2021, 42-year-old Nick would leave the couple's home, going off for a regular day at work. Unbeknownst to him, however, Fiona had already decided that when he returned back home, she was going to kill him. This is something that she had been meticulously planning. The evidence suggested that Fiona lured Nick to their bedroom under the guise of intimacy. Nick was restrained to the bed, likely with cable ties. He had an eye mask placed on his face before Fiona pulled out a knife so sharp that it actually pierced a hole in her dressing gown pocket and plunged it into Nick's neck, directly into his jugular vein, stabbing him to death. After murdering her partner of 17 years, Fiona wrapped up his body in black plastic and then tied that with cable ties. She dragged his body down the stairs, breaking some of the banister in the process, and then buried him in a shallow grave in their garden. She went on to either burn or dispose of pretty much all of Nick's personal belongings. She did not want a trace of him anywhere. She painted over blood splatter in the bedroom and moved around the garden furniture to conceal the grave. Something that Fiona decided to keep was Nick's phone. She would use this to impersonate Nick to text his family and his friends, feigning that he was still alive. She would text these people telling them that they had COVID and so they had to isolate for 10 days. And throughout this whole fake isolation period is when Fiona committed the murder, buried Nick's body, and then went on to do everything else. She would also watch adult videos on Nick's phone while she was high as a kite on cannabis. A couple of days before Christmas in 2021, Nick's mum would arrive to the couple's home on Moore Street to see her son. That is when Fiona sat her down and said that Nick had left her. He had up and he had went. He had left her for another woman. This is a story that she would spin and continue through the text messages on Nick's phone. To her, that would explain to everyone why no one had seen him, and she thought this would make people stop questioning where he was. What she is trying to do is distance him away from her. Fiona returned back to school to teach her Year 6 class at Eastfield Academy. She taught them as normal. Apparently, she delivered excellent classes, and there was no reason for anyone to think that something was wrong or something had happened. She was going on completely normal. The murder would begin to take its toll on Fiona, however. Her mental health deteriorated, and it got so bad that she was actually sectioned under the Mental Health Act in March 2022. That same month, Fiona Beale would be reported missing. The head teacher of her school was concerned because she hadn't showed up to work for a certain amount of days, and her friends and family were concerned too, after Fiona had been sending them very scary, concerning messages. They were worried for her well-being. They know that her mental health had plummeted, but they probably thought that this was a result of Nick leaving her for another woman, not because Fiona had murdered him. Police were able to track Fiona down to a log cabin in Windermere in the Lake District, where she had booked a 10-day holiday. When they arrived to her log cabin, they would find her in what they described as a distressed state. She had been self-harming and had tried to take her own life. Discovered inside of the cabin was Fiona's personal diary, and when the police started to flick through the pages, they couldn't believe what they were reading. Within this diary, Fiona had detailed planning a murder, she had written an entire confession, and she also wrote about her alter ego, who she named Tulip 22. She described Tulip 22 as reckless, fearless and efficient, and that it was Tulip 22 who committed the murder. In one of her entries where she was detailing hiding Nick's body, she wrote, quote, "Moving a body is much more difficult than it looks on TV." Following this discovery, obviously the police had to go and investigate. They arrived to the couple's home in Northampton, and that is when they would discover the body of Nick. He was still buried in the back garden and was partially mummified. A couple of days into her second trial, Fiona Beale would plead guilty to the murder of Nicholas Billingham. She received a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 20 years to serve.
She was abducted while playing outside by the grossest man ever. This is the frightening abduction of 8-year-old Sarah Payne. Sarah Evelyn Isabel Payne was born on October 13, 1991 to her parents Sarah and Michael. She had 2 older brothers named Lee and Luke and a younger sister named Charlotte. Everyone described Sarah as just a bundle of joy. She loved playing with her siblings. She loved being a girly girl. So she would always play dress up, she would play with her dolls, with her mom's makeup, and she was just such a kind little girl. On July 1st, 2000, the Payne family took a trip to the quiet beach village of Kingston Gorse in West Sussex, England to visit their grandparents. The kids loved going there because they could play in the beach, they could play on the sand, and they could play in the big open area that their grandparents had. The family was hanging out at the beach, and after some time, the parents and their grandparent decided to leave. However, the kids didn't want to leave just yet. They were having so much fun at the beach, so they begged their parents to let them stay there and play by themselves. Now at this time, Lee was 13, Luke was 11, Sarah was 8, and Charlotte was 5. Though their parents said that they could stay under the condition that they had to do exactly what their older brother said. The kids agreed and they stayed behind and continued playing. After some time, the kids stopped playing at the beach and they headed up to the cornfield that was right in front of their grandparents' home. There was like this rope swing there and the kids loved playing there, so they began playing a game of dinosaurs. However, at some point, Sarah fell and accidentally hurt herself and she got upset. She didn't want to play the game anymore and she told her brothers that she was going to go back to her grandma's house where their grandma was waiting for them. Their grandma's house was just a short distance away, but either way, Luke was like, no, don't leave, like just wait with us and then we'll go back together. But Sarah was really upset and she ignored her brother. She started making her way through the cornfield when her other brother Lee ran after her. He tried to calm Sarah down, but as he was doing this, his other little sister Charlotte began to cry. She had also fallen and accidentally hurt herself, so Lee says that he turned away for just a split second, and when he looked back to where Sarah was, she was gone. Lee said that he was within touching distance of Sarah, so he just didn't understand how she had vanished so quickly. He began looking around and he was distracted by the sound of screechy tires. So he turned around and that's when he saw a white van passing by. Lee started looking at this white van and he saw that this really gross and disgusting and just creepy guy was driving the van, and he actually made eye contact with the driver. The man smiled at Lee, waved at him, and then sped away. What Lee didn't know at the time is that his little sister Sarah was in the back of that van. Okay, go to part 2.
Woo, if you're someone who has fear around death and dying, please listen to the story. This is Dr. Eben Alexander. He is a Harvard-trained neurosurgeon. He is skeptical, he's logical, and he's firmly rooted in science. But in 2008, everything changed for him and his story is insane. Listen to this. He developed a rare brain infection so severe that his brain showed zero brain activity. They didn't think he'd survive. Just to make this super clear, the infection attacked his neocortex, which is in charge of things like memory, language, emotion, thought. It's basically the part of the brain that's in charge of hallucinating, imagining, anything that would like make something up in the brain was not functioning. He was scientifically incapable of dreaming, hallucinating, or imagining anything. The brain scans showed zero activity in this area of the brain. Meanwhile, Dr. Alexander wakes up, he says, in something he now calls the core. The core he describes as a realm outside of time and space, and all he could feel was pure love. He said he heard a resounding sound of Om. But Om was just not a sound. It was a presence. It was a being. And he said he felt so close to this Om and like a part of it. And Om wasn't only vast. It was vast, but he also was surprised by how personal it felt to him. Like this Om also knew and loved him personally, which immediately gives me chills and makes me feel like weeping. There was more to this place than just the core, which I'll get to in a second, but in the core, he said he received knowledge not through words, but just through knowing. And he basically heard, you are unconditionally loved, you are never alone, there is nothing to fear, and consciousness does not come from the brain. It exists outside of it. Okay, is your mind being blown yet? He was then guided throughout this realm by a beautiful woman with like glowing skin and striking eyes, who he said at the time he did not recognize. But stay tuned for that later in the video. This woman that he was with said he was not meant to stay here, that he was meant to go back and to remember that there was nothing to fear and to share what he has learned. When he woke up in that hospital room, he said he was a changed person and he knew he had a new mission on Earth, which was to share what he learned.
How I found out that my boyfriend is a cannibal. Good morning. No, this is not about my boyfriend. This is a story that I saw on other people's lives on YouTube. If you are new here, I like to give you guys summaries of the stories that I watch. If you want a full in-depth version, go to the YouTube channel, Other People's Lives. The woman who is telling this story is also no longer with this man. Okay, so it is her ex. Just wanted to put that out there. So the story starts with the girl, who, this is her story, saying that this boyfriend that she had, he had been trying to date her for a while. Like, he had been a part of her life for a good minute, and he was trying his hardest to get her attention, and she never gave it to him. And then one day she finally said, you know what? I am going to give this a shot. He seems like a very nice guy. Long story short, they were together for 6 years. I mean, everything was going perfect. They're together 6 years. They're obviously planning to spend forever with each other. And then all of a sudden, something changed. It was a night just like any other normal night with them. They were lying in bed, they were watching a movie, and then he offered to, go make her a drink, to which he drugged her. She said that she remembers waking up and seeing her leg under, so there was a trash bag and then a towel, and then her leg was lying on this towel. Okay, so he had double layered whatever he was wanting to put under her leg. And she saw him just kind of sitting there, chewing on something, like gnawing at something, almost like he was having a problem chewing through it. And she also started feeling a little bit of pain. So she looked down and she saw a 6-inch piece of her skin gone from her leg. Guys, 6 inches is not a little bit, okay? Her skin was cut off of her leg. In that moment, it was obviously really hard for her to understand what was going on because, the drugs were still in her system. And I mean, you're with somebody for 6 years. So the first thing you think probably isn't going to be, he's trying to eat me. But she started putting the pieces together that he had obviously drugged her and he cut off her skin. And while she was sleeping, he was trying to eat her skin. She was obviously very confused, and when she completely came to, she called the police. But she did say something in the video that I was also, thinking to myself, is like, how do you even explain this to the police? Like, would it be a domestic case? Would it be like, how do you explain that your partner was trying to eat parts of your body? I couldn't imagine. She also stated that when she called the police, her boyfriend at the time, now ex, he just said he was going to go take a walk, and he just calmly took the piece of skin, like a piece of just beef jerky, and he put it in his pocket, and he just walked. Like, he walked out of the house and said he was going to go for a walk, and the police obviously, ended up finding him and getting him. She also kept emphasizing just like the feeling of waking up, really not knowing what was going on. And you're seeing somebody that you have spent 6 years of your life with, and never would she have thought that this was something that he was, into. For 6 years, he managed to keep this impulse to himself. And then all of a sudden, just on a random movie night, she's waking up, and just the mental picture of seeing somebody, like you're in the dark because they were having a movie night, and you wake up and your boyfriend of 6 years is having a problem chewing through a piece of your skin that he cut off, not a small piece, right? She said by the end of the story, the piece of skin that he had taken was like more than halfway gone. So he had managed to get a good amount into his system. I don't know. This is crazy. She was nervous to take him to court because she did state that she could not afford a good attorney, and he had a lot of money, so he could afford the best attorneys, right? So of course, when it goes to court, those attorneys try and pull some pretty low blows, Well, we noticed that she already has self-harm scars, so maybe he was actually just trying to stop her from harming herself, and she blamed it all on him. Maybe he's insane, and that was his way of just trying to feel closer to her. There are so many ways to feel closer to your partner that does not involve eating their flesh. She also, of course, said that, his lawyers were saying, well, maybe he was on drugs. He had to have been on something that made him, get into this state where he thought that this was normal, or something that, persuaded him. He had to have been under the influence of some sort, right? Well, his talk screen was completely clean, and hers was too, minus the roofie, right? She basically just said that nobody was taking it as serious as they should, and this is an incredibly, I wouldn't say unique, but definitely something that you need to take more serious than whatever she said she was experiencing in that courtroom. I believe that she said that this happened in 2022. I could be wrong, but I believe that she said 2022. Again, go watch the full video on Other People's Lives on YouTube if you want every full in-depth detail, okay? They only gave him 5 years. 5 years with eligibility for parole. And I think that if you're going to give him a short sentence like that, he needs to go directly into a psych ward afterwards, because that is not normal behavior. That's not a kink. That's not a fetish. This is not some sort of sexual impulse that he had. I mean, it was an impulse, but I just don't think that that's something like wanting to eat another human being is something that you can just turn off, She did, of course, say that she has been in therapy, and she has been, trying to get over it, take care of herself. I'm really glad that she's, still actively in therapy trying to get over this, because just the fact that they were together, I would be traumatized if I was with a person a year and then found out that this is what they do. and they were able to hold that impulse to themselves for a year, let alone 6 years. They lived together. 6 years is a long time to spend with a person to, out of nowhere, just find out that there is something extremely wrong with them. Anyways, I gotta go. Let me know what you think about this story in the comments. I hope that you all have a great day. I love you. Bye.
Reading the most disturbing Wikipedia pages so you don't have to, episode 1. And today's page is dedicated to the horrific story of French showman known as Terrare. Fellow salmonella enjoyers will already know where this story is going, but if not, buckle in because it's pretty gross. Terrare was born in France in 1772. His date of birth is actually unrecorded, and it's unknown whether the name Terrare is a nickname or his real name. And growing up, his parents soon realised that Terrare had the most insane appetite ever recorded. He was able to eat so much food despite him never gaining weight and being incredibly thin and average height. Terrare was apparently always hot to the touch and always really sweaty, which also meant that Terrare had an insane body odour that could, quote, not be endured within 20 paces, and cartoon stink lines were described as rising from his body. Being kicked out as a teenager, he was forced to roam the streets where he ended up with a gang of thieves picking pockets for a living. However, he eventually became a warm-up act for a travelling charlatan, where Terrare were drawing a crowd by eating baskets full of apples, wine corks, stones, and even live animals. However, at one point while during one of these shows, he had to be rushed to hospital as he had suffered an intestinal blockage that was so insane that the hospital had to describe him the most strongest laxatives they had. What happened next, I'll leave to your imagination. It's not known what caused Terrare's behaviour, but the Wikipedia page goes on to horrifically describe Terrare tearing apart and eating a live cat, when she then later gagged up the skin and fur. He was also reportedly very fond of snake meat. Terrare actually also served in the military as a spy for a period of time, and it was here where a doctor took increased interest in Terrare because of his crazy ability to just continue eating. Whilst he was in the army, despite him being granted quadruple rations, he would still steal food from bins and lick up other crumbs from other soldiers. So this doctor, known as Dr. Perry, carried out some experiments just to push the limits to see how much Terrare could actually eat. He was presented with a meal fit for 15 people, which he devoured within minutes, then fell asleep straight after. He was also presented with a live eel, which he then crushed its head between its teeth and swallowed it whole. This is an image of an eel skeleton, which makes it even more horrific. Whilst in the military, it was believed that he could be used as a spy, so he was given a wooden box with a note inside, made to swallow it. A couple of days goes by, the box passes, the note's intact, so the general was like, I'm going to use this man as a spy. So Terrare swallowed another box and crossed over to Parisian light under the darkness, described as a German peasant. However, he stuck out like a sore thumb because he stank, was eating garbage, and didn't speak German. After 24 hours of captivity, Terrare ended up singing like a little canary about what he had done, where he was then chained to a toilet and the box would end up passing about 30 hours later. However, when the box emerged, it was nothing but a dummy note, so Terrare was mock executed, then sent on his way back to France. By this time, Terrare was desperate for a cure. Doctors tried everything from vinegar to morphine, but of course, nothing works. And whilst at the hospital, Terrare's behaviour became even more unhinged than ever before. For example, he was caught trying to drink the blood from patients that were undergoing bloodletting, and he was even caught multiple times trying to eat bodies in the morgue. But the breaking point came when a 14-month-old baby disappeared from that same hospital, and as you can imagine, Terrare was blamed. It's not known whether he genuinely ate the baby, but the baby was never found. He later passed away of tuberculosis in 1798 at just 26 years old, and when he did pass away, his corpse rotted insanely quickly. During an autopsy, you could see that 90% of his body was dedicated to food, with his esophagus, gallbladder and liver being absolutely massive, and his stomach being described as enormous. His whole entire body was also full of really gross, stinky pus. To this day, it's not really known what Terrare suffered from, but it is believed that he is truly a true human anomaly.
This story right here is the proof that you are never actually safe, even inside your house. It all started in 1941 when an old man called Philip Peters was living alone in his big house. You see, one day Philip was just chilling, but suddenly he heard a noise coming from the other side of the house. He got confused and he decided to check it out immediately. When he made it to the room where he thought the noise came from, he did not find anything. And him not believing in supernatural stuff and all that, he assumed that it was the walls. Yes, he basically assumed that something was wrong with the house when it was built, you know, something that has to do with pillars, woods, and all that. So this thing happened multiple times. Peter hears the noise, he goes to where the noise came from, nothing. This thing kept happening for 5 weeks until something changed. You see, one night Peter heard that sound again, so his reaction was like, alright, you know what, let's check it out. And on his way, he was sure that he wouldn't find anything, just like every time. When he made it to the room, he took a little peek to see who was there. To his surprise, he found a tall, skinny figure messing with his fridge. And ladies and gentlemen, this was the last thing that Philip will see, because he will get unalived just after. Yes, whoever or whatever was messing with the fridge in the dark immediately unalived Philip, who was an old man trying to defend himself and his home. Later that day, police came here to investigate and see what happened to Peter, so they checked the whole house and they didn't find anything. Only thing they didn't check was a trapdoor, but it was so high in the ceiling, okay, nobody can even get there. Knowing all this and the fact that the house was actually closed from the inside, well, they classified this as a natural cause. After a while, Peter's wife moved into this house. She hired a housekeeper with her. They stayed there for a while, and even they started hearing noises. This is where they were like, okay bro, this house is actually haunted. Let's get the fuck out of here. That's exactly what they did after hearing the noise, and now nobody lives in this house anymore. Well, kind of. You see, after a while, the neighbors began noticing that the lights of this house are sometimes on, which is really weird because nobody's supposed to be there. I mean, Peter's no longer with us, his wife left a long time ago, so who's doing this? Some neighbors even tried to knock on the door to see if somebody's there, but obviously they got no answer. So this whole thing became weird and suspicious. Who the fuck is turning the lights on if nobody is there? Well, this is where the neighbors decided to call the police. The police received the call. They decided to play it smarter this time. They didn't want to break in and then don't find anything just like the last time. They decided to stay back and observe. They sent 2 officers who stayed in their car, watched this house all day, all night from very far. So the officers kept watching this house for a while, and at one point it really happened. The lights went on and then they saw something moving really fast. Now that they've seen what they saw, there is no doubt about it. Something is actually inside the house, so they decided to break in. The police entered the house. They started following the noise of steps, and these steps, whoever's taking them, well, he sounded in a hurry like he was running. They followed these steps until they disappeared. They looked up, and this is what they saw. If you're wondering, bro, what the hell is this? Well, these are legs hanging from a trapdoor. Yes, somebody tried to escape by using the trapdoor that led to the attic, but the police officers arrived before that and they grabbed him. They pulled him down and turned out to be this man right here. This man is Theodore Conis, and he was secretly living in the attic of the house. Yes, he was the one making these noises this whole time, and he was so good at hiding that Philip, you know, the one who passed, didn't even figure out that there was somebody living with him in his house. When Philip did, you know, when he saw him messing with a fridge, it was too late because this man decided to unalive him. Scary thing about this is that he was watching Peter every day. He would watch him eat and then take a nap. And when Philip does that, well, he goes down and uses the house freely. He was so thin that he could move into the narrow gaps of the walls. Bro, this is the attic where he used to stay, and I'm not gonna lie, this is so creepy. You're telling me that a grown-ass man actually fits in this place and he is watching another grown-ass man? I mean, what if he caught him goon? Okay, never mind.